We are all well aware of how insanely difficult it is to make it to the big leagues. We know that the odds are stacked against us. And if we are high school baseball players or playing baseball in high school at any point in time, the odds of us making it to the big leagues are about 829 in 1, which, if you're nerdy like me and you like doing numbers, you kind of factor that out, man, that is just over a tenth of a percent. So you have 0.12% chance of making it to the big leagues when you are a high school baseball player. That is insane. We know that it is a long grind. The odds are always stacked against you, and a lot of stuff has to go right. The stars have to align in order for you to continue progressing. And as you progress, your odds and the chances that you make it continue to climb. So I'd like to focus this episode on what life is really like in the minor leagues. We know it's a grind. We know that the money isn't necessarily that incredible. It's not life-changing money. As you keep progressing and as the rules keep changing, players are able to make more money and afford a nice little living in the minor leagues. But I really wanted to focus on what the grind is like behind the scenes, what life is really like. I spent the majority of my career in AA and AAA, and so I was a college walk-on who ended up getting drafted, who ended up making it to the big leagues. And so, like I said, I spent the majority of my career in these higher levels in AA and AAA, and so life wasn't always necessarily that pretty. Life wasn't necessarily always that easy, and it damn sure wasn't easy with the money. It's a little bit different now, but I wanted to take a deeper dive into what goes on behind the scenes. So when you get drafted, if you are fortunate enough to get drafted by a Major League Baseball team or a Major League Baseball organization, right off the bat, your goal has to be to progress as quickly as possible and get to AA as quickly as possible. So once we get to AA baseball, that's where life begins. That's where life begins. That's where everything starts to happen. So we're in the grind once we get to AA. That was my first taste of professional baseball. That's when the stadiums start to get big. That's when they start to get nice. That's when everything starts to get a little bit pristine. And that's when we really start to feel like we're close to the big leagues. That's when we're like, dude, it is within, striking distance. I'm right there. And so when we get drafted, our number one goal needs to be to progress as quickly as possible to AA, right? And that looks different for everybody depending on your talents, depending on where you got drafted, depending on, what you're supposed to be doing. But when we get to AA, the rule is you're either up or you're out. So if you were fortunate enough in your career to make it to AA, that's where you prove yourself. So even if you hit 300 in A ball, doesn't necessarily matter. Anybody can hit 300 in A ball. If you hit 300 in AA though, you're a dude. You're proving that you are surrounded by top tier competition and you can handle yourself. So I've always heard this, man, if you hit 300 for 1 year, yeah, obviously you're going to move on, but you perform well in AA, you're up. If you can't perform well in AA, you're out. When we get to AAA, that's where it's just about staying afloat. Yes, the competition is insanely difficult. The travel is insanely difficult. The schedule stinks, right? The conditions aren't necessarily always immaculate, but they are way better than they are in AA. So like I said, stadiums start to get a little bit nicer in AA. Let's say if we progress through the minor leagues, we end up getting to AA. That's great, right? You have multiple clubhouse attendants, so that's where you start getting the nice professional treatment. So you come up through the minor leagues, you get rookie ball, A ball, low A, high A. You have to carry your own bags, right? I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's how it is. You have to take these bus trips that kind of suck. You're playing in these minor league stadiums in these cities that are kind of run down. They're not necessarily, great places you'd like to have your family in. But when we get to AA, that's where things start to change a little bit. We start, showing up to these nice stadiums. The buses are a little bit nicer. We don't have to carry our bags. The food's nicer pregame and postgame. The hotels are way nicer, right? You're not staying in Motel 6s anymore and then, budget inns and stuff like that. We're starting to, stay in nice places. You're starting to be around these guys that have major league time. So when we get to AA, some of these players are veteran players. Some of these players are free agents. So we got minor league free agents, major league free agents, whether they've been designated or whether they sign these minor league contracts. my first taste of playing with Major League Baseball players came when I was in Double A, because these guys are kind of just almost one step away from the major leagues. But why would you have a, major league caliber player in A ball or high A when they should be kind of at the higher minor leagues, right? So we're going to be around players with MLB time. Some of these players are veterans, rehab players. We got a mix of young prospects. So it's an interesting dynamic in Double A, because some organizations like to stash their top minor league dudes in Double A because of proximity. So the Double A team might be closer to the major league team than the AAA team is to the major league team. So if that's the case, a guy that they want to be able to come up in a pinch and then send back down, they're going to keep him in close proximity. They're going to keep him in Double A. So sometimes we see these teams stash their top prospects, their top bullpen arms, their top pitchers in Double A, whether it's a pitcher-friendly ballpark. Why would you want your top pitching prospect go to AAA and get absolutely shelled, get his confidence shelled? Maybe it's a more pitcher-friendly environment in Double A. They want to groom their top talent for the next level. I absolutely get it, but that's where we start getting around high caliber talent. The pitchers in Double A are absolutely nasty. That's where you start seeing fuzz, start seeing triple digits, start seeing guys, throw with some serious velocity. This is where you start feeling like Major League Baseball is within your grasp. Once you get to Double A, you're like, dude, this is it. I'm playing professional baseball now in Double A. It's not that it doesn't necessarily feel like that when you're in rookie ball or low A or high A. It just, you don't get that professional treatment as much as you do when you step foot in the Double A circuit. So things are much higher end than high A, right? We're talking about the clubhouses, the away trips, the away clubhouses. So you take a look at these home clubhouses. Dude, you could get lost in some of these. I've gotten lost in a AAA clubhouse before, out in Las Vegas. Man, it's absolutely insane. But where you start experiencing these nice clubhouses, these really nice stadiums, is once you get to the Double A level. I spent a good amount of time in the Double A Southern League, and that sucks, man. I spent about a half a season in the Texas League with the Arkansas Travelers in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was insane, man. That was really where I got my first taste of professional baseball. I spent a lot of time in Double A. I spent a lot of time in Triple A. I played parts of 9 seasons in minor league baseball, and 7 of those were in Double A and Triple A. Majority of Triple A, and so it's a definite grind, man. It is a definite grind. Like I said, you have free agents mixing in. It's not just the same dudes that you got drafted with and you came up with. So you're starting to mix in with other players from different organizations coming over, trying to get opportunities. That's where it's like, okay, I'm not in my comfort zone anymore. You start getting into Double A baseball, and it's like, okay, this is really about competing against top tier talent all over the place, man. They're bringing in people to try to funnel them up to the big leagues. So in my experience, like I said, where you play in Double A makes all the difference on your experience. I played in Jackson, Tennessee for, a year and a half, maybe a little over a year and a half, and it was miserable. They didn't necessarily support their team very well. There were no fans in the stadium. I remember winning a Double A championship, the Southern League championship in 2016, and we probably had 30, 40, maybe 50 people in the stands for this championship. This is Double A baseball, guys. This is Double A baseball. We got high schools drawing more crowds than the Jackson Generals when I was playing for them in 2016. Man, it's absolutely mind blowing. Little Rock, Arkansas, in the Texas League was insane. I loved it, man. It was a joy, right? It was so much fun grinding and playing through all that experience. The biggest jump in competition, like I said, man, you are either up or you're out. So there's no in between when it comes to Double A baseball. If you get there and you can't perform, you're out. You're not. Why would they? They're not going to make you move on to Triple A if you can't perform in Double A. So the highest pressure is really in Double A, whether you understand that or not. So you either prove you're a big leaguer in Double A, or that's where your career is going to fizzle out and it's going to come to an end. The arms are legit. Like I said, there's top prospects there. There's flamethrowers. Some teams call their guys up from Double A to the big leagues, and I've seen it personally. There were some players on my team that did that, right? Whether it's proximity, pitchability, man. We touched on that earlier. Man, they'll be stashed there. They'll be ready to go. So this is where you really start noticing scouts. Man, so once I got to double A, that's where it was like, okay, I'm noticing some scouts in the stands. I'm noticing scouts show up for batting practice. This is really where professional baseball seems to start for a lot of players. And this is really where it opened my eyes to, hey, it's more so about a business, and there are eyes all over you, because at any point in time, if you're playing in double A baseball, you could be a Major League Baseball player. Like, the difference between a double A arm and a Major League arm is just consistency. Maybe it's stuff, right? But these double A arms, they can throw hard. They have electric off speed. Maybe they just can't command the zone as much. That's why they're there in double A. They're working on it. They're trying to become more consistent so that they can get that right up to the big leagues. But when you get to the big leagues, obviously these dudes have multiple pitches. They can command the zone inside and out. But this is where you really start noticing scouts. This is where you start noticing the camcorders when you're taking ABs, you're taking batting practice, man. This is where you're like, okay, I could have a good second half here, or I could have a good month here, and I could potentially be up, right? So everyone is bigger, everyone's better, everyone's way more mature in double A than they are in high A, right? When we go from double A to triple A, it's not necessarily everybody's more mature, everybody's bigger, everybody's like better and badder. Man, it's just they've proven that it's either you're up or you're out. They've proven it at the double A level, so they have gotten to go on and move on to the final boss, triple A. So in double A, like I said, man, the bus rides suck. The bus rides stink. But that's also something that you're going to miss when you move on to triple A. So when we move on to triple A, it is solely flying left and right. You are going to fly on these commercial flights. Your game from the night before, let's say you have a 7:05 game in let's say you have a 7:05 game in double A. So you play the game, you get done probably around 11. Let's say you pack up the clubbies, you have to help pack up here and there, get your bags onto the bus. You take that bus ride back to where you're going, or you take a 9 or 10 hour bus ride to your next destination. You get into the hotel early in the morning, and then you're chilling out the rest of the day until you have to get to the field around 1 or 2 for this 7 o'clock game. On these bus rides, man, that's really where you start connecting with your teammates. That's where you're playing cards. That's where you're listening to music. That's where you're having a good time, right? Some players, the older, the staff members and the players that maybe want to sleep, catch up on their sleep, recover, they'll stay at the front of the bus. Obviously, the players in the back of the bus, that's where you're carrying on. That's where you're playing some cards. That's where you're laughing. That's where you're having a good time. You're not really worried about sleep, man. I get it, but that's what it's like traveling-wise in double A. Man, it stinks, but you do miss out on that camaraderie. You do miss out on building those relationships when you go on to triple A. So another big thing when it comes to double A baseball as opposed to triple A baseball is the workouts. So obviously, as minor league baseball players, professional baseball players, you need to be working out in order to keep your body in tip-top shape so that you can maximize your career and make it to the big leagues. When we get to double A, yeah, maybe the stadiums are nicer, maybe the locker rooms are nicer, the treatment's a lot nicer, but you don't necessarily have a gym in your locker room. So you have these early morning workouts. Let's say if you have a 7 o'clock game, 7:05 first pitch, you will maybe do your workout at 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning. They'll have some guys rotating in. Let's say if you have a 5-game homestand for this week, they want you to get in at least 1 or 2 workouts during the week. You're going to need to show up early in the morning, 9 or 10 a.m. You just had a game last night at 7. It's a quick turnaround, dude, but that's what you got to do. You're held to that standard. There are rules in place for you in AA baseball, and you have to abide by them because you're still kind of treated like a kid. You're still kind of treated like a lower tier professional, even though it is professional. There are rules in place when you are in AA. So now let's talk about what life is like in AAA. So we talked about AAA a little bit on some content that damn near went viral, but AAA is the mini big leagues. So as I said, if AA is where you prove or solidify yourself as a big leaguer, that's kind of where you say, hey, I'm a dude. You're up or you're out. I mean, AAA is where you go to wait for an opportunity. So when we are up or we're out in AA, we prove that we can hang with the big boys, the top prospects, the veterans, right? The new players, the flame throwers, and we go on to AAA. That's where you have to stay afloat. Yes, of course, you need to produce. You need to be a good baseball player up in AAA, but that's where you go and you wait for your opportunity. So it's you stay afloat. You're trying to just hang out, right? You need to produce every single day, but you've proven that you're a Major League Baseball player in AA. You go there in AAA, and you need to get lucky in order to get to the big leagues at this point. So if we've proven in AA that we are a Major League Baseball player, you're up or you're out, as I just said. You get to AAA, and it's about a spot opening up for your opportunity in the big leagues. In order for you as a AAA baseball player or a AA baseball player, in order for you as a higher level minor league baseball player to make it to the big leagues, there needs to be a spot open up. Let me say that again. In order for you to make it to the big leagues as a AA baseball player or a AAA baseball player, there needs to be a spot that opens up for you. Just because you're hitting 300 in AA or you're hitting 300 in AAA, that doesn't mean you're going to get called up to the big leagues. There needs to be a roster move. There needs to be somebody that gets traded. There needs to be somebody that gets hurt. There needs to be somebody that gets off the roster. Somebody gets DFA'd or taken off the roster. They get released. Whatever the case is, you don't just get called up to the big leagues because you're performing well. There needs to be a corresponding move. There's only, 40 roster spots. They can't just create a 41st roster spot for you because you're having an all-star year in AA. That took me a long time to figure out. I've had years ruined because of that, because I was a mental midget when it came to this stuff. I'm thinking, dude, I'm having a damn good year. How come I'm not in the big leagues? That's just not necessarily how it works, man. They talk about you need to get lucky in order to get to the big leagues. That's what they're talking about. Yes, you can control what you can control, your preparation, your attitude, everything, your effort, and you can do everything right. You can perform right. You can lead the league in hitting. You can lead the league in stolen bases. You can lead the league in RBIs, but that still doesn't mean you're going to get called up to the big leagues. A corresponding move has to happen up top, and a spot needs to open up in order for you to go up. So, like I said, AAA is the mini big leagues. It's a grind, but there are far more amenities and resources at that level than at any other level, man. There aren't necessarily any rules for you. You don't have to show up at 9 or 10 a.m. to get a workout in, right? At this level, it's about you knowing what you need to do to get ready. So if you want to get a workout in, first of all, there's a gym at the stadium. There's a gym either in your clubhouse or in the home team's clubhouse. Get your work in, right? Maybe you show up to the field a little bit early, you go over there, you get it in, and then you just roll right into batting practice. But you have the choice to do it all in the stadium. You have the choice to do it all in the locker room or the clubhouse. You don't have to go to a different gym. You don't have to drive 15, 20 minutes across town to go get your workout in a fucking LA Fitness. Everything can be done here in the stadium. The cool thing about AAA is you could have anything you want or everything you need in one place. You don't have to leave and go get it elsewhere. There are multiple clubhouse attendants that will do what you need, right? Obviously, you need to tip them money in order to say, hey, Steve, you go get me Chick-fil-A, dude? Or, hey, man, can you go get me the new PlayStation, right? There's a new video game that just came out. You mind going and grabbing that and having that in my locker, when I get back from the game? Of course, you need to tip them and you need to pay them, but you don't need to do anything. You don't need to go anywhere else. You can have everything that you need in your AAA locker room. It's pretty cool. So you'll be surrounded in AAA by dudes with big league time, right? Everybody seems to have major league time. When I got to AAA, man, my eyes were wide. I'm looking around left and right. There are dudes with 3 years in the big leagues. There are dudes that have just been up and down. There's a guy that had a cup of coffee last year. There's a 12-year major league veteran in the locker next to me, right? I'm sharing a locker right next to John Neese, who was just pitching in for the New York Mets for a couple of years the years prior, made millions of dollars. And that's my locker room. That's my locker mate right next to me. And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to stay afloat in AAA. I'm just trying to get my first AAA knock. This dude just made $4 million last year, right? That's the kind of experience you get in AAA. There's going to be a whole bunch of people from different organizations, We got a whole bunch of free agents. A lot of times in AAA, the dudes that are making up these AAA rosters, it's their first time with the organization. So if you look at the AAA roster, for me, it was the Tacoma Rainiers. Not everybody was a Seattle Mariners draft pick, right? We have guys coming in from one of the other organizations. We got guys that are traded. We got guys that have been released and that have been picked up by the Mariners. It's just a whole bunch of different people. There's a lot of salty vets. So when we talk about salty veterans, what does that mean? That means that dude was just in the big leagues last week, making $20, $30, $40,000 in a paycheck, and he's here now in AAA, not getting the full experience, making a fraction of his money, not necessarily in the best situation, right? I talk about AAA being a blessing. AAA, you get nice stadiums, you get nice treatment. But as opposed to the big leagues, dude, you can't compare it. So the dudes that have experience up in the big leagues, when they come down to AAA, they're salty as fuck. They're like, man, I shouldn't be here. I need to be up in the big leagues. So that was my first real taste of having salty veterans in the clubhouse with me. These dudes that have made millions of dollars, or they've been up in the big leagues for years. They don't want to be in AAA. So these guys have bad attitudes, right? That was my first real experience and my first taste of that. You get multiple strength coaches. So you have support staff in AAA baseball, left and right. You have multiple strength and conditioning coaches. Hey, you need to get stretched out, or hey, dude, you need to get a workout in. We need to roll you out, right? You have a sore hamstring. Let's get you rubbed out, right? You have multiple trainers. So a lot of pitchers are in the training room before the game, but you have 3, 4, maybe even 5 trainers that can do whatever you need, and they're on call all the time. If you have a problem, you hit them up. If you have a problem or you have a question, you go in the training room. These guys are here to help you. You don't necessarily have that in AA. You don't necessarily have that in high A, and you damn sure don't have that in the lower minor leagues. Like I said, the weight rooms are inside of the facility. You don't have to leave the AAA clubhouse or the AAA stadium to get anything you need. Everything can be brought to you. Obviously, it costs, but you're making more money up there, and you're around major league players or players that have been in the major league, so everybody seems to have money. You have more freedom. You don't necessarily have all these rules that are governing you and telling you what you can and can't do. And if you don't want to get a workout in, you don't. Right? If in AA, batting practice is mandatory, and it's at this time every single day, and if you miss it, you're in trouble. But in AAA, dude, you're going to be expected to know what you need to do in order to get your body ready, in order to get your mind ready, in order to get your swing and your mechanics ready for 705. If that means not taking batting practice in AAA, you don't have to. That's crazy to think about. But when you're at that level, you're one step away from the major leagues. When you are in Major League Baseball, you're going to be expected to know every single day what you need to do in order to perform your best. The same rings true in AAA baseball. So this is, like I said, this is the level where you're going to be expected to know what you need, and you don't need to do anything you don't want to do, right? And here's a prime example. In AA, dude, we had to do specific long toss routines every single day or every other day, but it was team structured. The coach, the manager would be out on the field watching all of us in AA 2017 long toss, watching our throws, watching us go all the way out and then come back in. In AAA, you don't want a long toss? You don't. There aren't any rules governing you on if you long toss or how you do it or how many throws you do. In AAA, if you don't want to take BP, man, if you're hitting well, don't. Right? In AA, it's what? You get 4 or 5 rounds of 5. You can't take more than 5 swings in a round. In AAA, you got veteran dudes taking whatever they want. They want to hit multiple rounds. They don't feel good. Take as much as you want. That's what AAA is like, especially compared to all the other levels. So in AAA, you fly. When you're on the road, you fly. And it's not private, dude. It's commercial. And it's at the ass crack of dawn. So you had a game last night, 7:05. So this was my experience in Tacoma, playing for the Tacoma Rainiers, AAA, for the Seattle Mariners. I was there for, 2.5 years. I was in AAA Tacoma for 2.5 years, and so this would be our schedule. I'd have a game like last night at 7:05. get back to your hotel, or you get back to your apartment or your room at 11, and you have to be at the field, back at the field at 3 a.m. because you're going to take a bus to the airport, and you have a 5 o'clock flight or a 6 o'clock flight. You get there and you get on these planes. You've got no sleep, dude. And then you take this flight, this commercial flight with other just random people here. You have middle seats because you're flying Southwest Airlines and you're the last one to board because they're trying to save money. So you're sitting in a middle seat, crammed in here with, people left and right. You don't know who they are. And you get this 5 hour flight to where you're going. And then you get in at 9, 10, 11 a.m. and you try to get a couple hours of sleep in before you got to get to the field, right? That's how it works in AAA, dude. It is an absolute grind. So when we talk about AA, it's either you're up or you're out. That's where you prove you're a major league player and you're ready for it. In AAA, it's about just holding on. You're just trying to hold on. The schedule stinks. It's a grind, right? It's grueling. There's a whole lot of travel, and it's not necessarily sexy. And yes, the pitching's great. The pitching's good. The competition's great. You're playing against like-minded peers who have similar, competitiveness and similar skill levels, and they are damn good baseball players. A lot of them were Major League Baseball players not too long ago, or they're continuing to trickle up and down. And so it's all about just maintaining. It's about maintaining that consistency and those results. AAA, man, you're treated differently. Like I said, you're not required to do anything. There's no rules governing you. If you don't want to take BP, dude, you don't take BP. If you don't want to long toss today, you don't long toss today. You don't want to work out in AAA, you're not feeling it today, dude, don't do it. Right? The manager's not going to punish you for not doing it. Obviously, certain organizations are different. Certain teams are different. And the veteran players around the clubhouse will police that differently, right? But there aren't as many rules governing you, in AAA as there are in AA. AAA for me as well was where like alcohol kind of got introduced, right? So post game, there would be some beers in the fridge. If you want to have a beer after the game in AAA, go ahead. AA, that shit does not fly. High A, you better not. You better not be seen with any alcohol in the lower minor leagues. But in AAA, dude, there's fridges jam packed full of that shit, right? So that's where you start experiencing like, hey man, there's no rules here. This is really like professional baseball. It's crazy. It's just you're required to be ready for first pitch at 7:05. That is the only rule in AAA baseball. Get ready to play. Do what you need to do in order to perform at 7:05, and so you can give our team the best chance to win. So in AAA, veteran leadership plays a significant role. Like I said, you're going to be surrounded, like I was, by players that have major league time, that have made millions of dollars, that have won World Series before. I've seen World Series rings in minor league locker rooms in AAA. I'm like, dude, what? What are you doing with these here, man? But like, that's how it is. Veteran leadership comes into play. You start getting that, okay, this is where I fit in. I haven't played past AAA before. I haven't made it to the big leagues, so this is where I fit in on the totem pole of veteran leadership. That's where you start seeing locker room dynamics, and that's where you start interacting kind of with what your position is on the team. So pitchers aren't necessarily the top prospects in AAA like they are in AA. It's more about availability and necessity in AAA. So if teams are, potentially going to hide or stash or keep their guys in AA, those are going to be the flamethrowers, right? Where they can maybe develop a little bit more. The stats aren't When you get to AAA, these guys are ready for the major leagues. So the dudes that are ready for the major leagues that have either gone up or out from AA, they're probably in the big leagues, right? So we're not necessarily going to see the top prospects and the flamethrowers in AAA. Those guys are usually going to be in the big leagues. And when they're in AA, that's when they're trying to prove it. But these AAA pitchers, man, they know how to pitch. They know how to pitch. AA is where you start seeing pitchers like be able to pitch you backwards. I remember my first at-bat in AA baseball, I saw a 2-0 changeup. I've never seen a 2-0 changeup in my life. Inside, dude, painted on the inside corner to get the count to 2-1. I ended up K'ing. But like, pitchers start pitching you backwards in AA. AAA, you see a ton of off speed, man. That's what it's like. In AAA, at least in the PCL, the Pacific Coast League, the ball can fly. So these pitchers need to get crafty in order to get you out. That's where you start seeing pitchers start pitching you backwards. They start you off with off speed. They try to put you away with off speed. They'll throw off speed at any count. So like your approach matters. In AAA, the strike zones are smaller. The umps are way better. They are way more consistent. And the fields are immaculate. You're not going to play on a field in AAA that isn't major league quality. The grass is beautiful. The conditions are perfect. The dirt doesn't hurt when you slide head first into second base. You look at your arms and you don't need stitches from all the stones and shit that's in the dirt, man. The grounds crew is insane. I remember my last year in AAA, the Iowa Cubs, man, that ground crew over there was insane, dude. Spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the grass just in the outfield that they have to replace every couple of years. And those dudes, it's insane the amount of work that they put into that. You can sleep on that outfield grass. It's so comfortable, right? So the strike zones are smaller. The umps are way better, way more consistent. Anything you want, anything you need in AAA, you get it delivered to you right to your locker. You obviously just have to pay for it, man. No rules, no curfew. You're a grown man in AAA. And you've earned that right because you've gotten up from AA. Like I said, AA, you're either up or you're out. In AAA, you've proven it. A lot of guys with families in season in AAA. So like in not necessarily in AA or high A, like guys aren't necessarily married yet. But as we get to AAA, that's where you start seeing families. That's where you start seeing guys live with their families. You're able to afford bringing your family on the road, kids, all that good stuff, man. The dynamics of it, it's pretty interesting. And it's in my opinion, you don't get to see a lot of it unless you've lived through it. So that's all I got for you guys today. I just wanted to detail the grind behind the scenes, AA, AAA. The grind doesn't change. It's just the amenities are better and the opportunities get a little bit easier, a little bit more like in depth as you make it up the ladder, but the grind still remains the same. I hope this helps you out. I hope everybody has a good weekend. Appreciate you guys tuning in to this live edition of the 9 Hole Podcast. I will catch you guys again here soon.